the most ridiculous deaths in history. Meet Francis Bacon, a man so brilliant he basically invented the scientific method, and so stupid he killed himself proving that chicken doesn't rot when it's cold. Yes, you heard that right. Picture this. It's 1626, and 65-year-old Bacon is cruising through London in his carriage, probably feeling pretty smug about being one of the smartest guys in England. The winter air is biting cold, and suddenly, this genius has what he thinks is the eureka moment of the century. By Jove, he probably thought, what if this freezing weather could preserve meat? What if cold prevents decay? Now, any normal person might write this down, maybe test it later in a controlled environment, but Francis Bacon, oh no. This man had the brilliant idea to pull over immediately and conduct a scientific experiment right there on the spot. He marches into the nearest house, demands they give him a chicken, and proceeds to stuff this poor dead bird with snow. Not satisfied with just doing it once, he keeps shoving handful after handful of snow into this chicken like he's preparing the world's most tragic holiday dinner. Here's the thing about snow in 1626, London. It wasn't exactly the cleanest substance around. We're talking about an era where people threw their waste into the streets. But our boy Francis is out there, barehanded, playing with contaminated slush like it's Play-Doh. So there he is, the father of empiricism, cramming snow into a dead chicken with the enthusiasm of a child building a snowman, completely oblivious to the fact that he's basically giving himself a death sentence. The irony? His experiment actually worked. The chicken stayed preserved. But Francis? Well, Francis caught a severe chill that developed into pneumonia within days. The man who revolutionized how we understand the world was bedridden, coughing his lungs out because he couldn't wait 5 minutes to test his theory properly. And here's the best part. On his deathbed, still wheezing and barely able to speak, what do you think Francis Bacon was talking about? His family? His legacy? His profound contributions to science? Nope, he was bragging about how well preserved that damn chicken was. He died a few days later, essentially killed by his own curiosity and a complete lack of basic hygiene awareness. The man who taught us to question everything forgot to question whether shoving his hands into filthy London snow was a good idea. Francis Bacon, brilliant enough to lay the foundation for modern science, too impatient to test his theory for spring. His last words should have been, "I told you so," because technically he was right about food preservation, he just didn't live long enough to enjoy being right. But if you think Francis Bacon's death was ridiculous, wait until you hear about Aeschylus, the ancient Greek playwright who was literally killed by a book falling from the sky. Well, not exactly a book, but we'll get to that. Aeschylus was basically the Stephen King of ancient Greece. Except instead of writing about creepy clowns and haunted hotels, he wrote tragedies that made audiences weep uncontrollably. This guy practically invented Greek drama as we know it. He was so good at his job that he won the city's dramatic competitions 13 times. 13! But here's where things get interesting. According to legend, a prophet once told Aeschylus that he would die when something fell on him from the sky. Now, most people would probably think meteor or lightning, or maybe angry gods throwing rocks. Aeschylus, being the drama queen that he was, decided the best way to avoid this fate was to spend his time outdoors, away from buildings where things could potentially fall on his head. Smart thinking, right? What could possibly fall on you in the middle of an open field? Well, apparently nobody told the local wildlife about Aeschylus's clever plan. You see, there was this eagle flying around, and this eagle had just caught itself a nice meaty tortoise for lunch. But here's the thing about tortoises. They come with their own armor. That shell is tough, and eagles aren't exactly equipped with can openers. So what does a smart eagle do when it needs to crack open a tortoise? It flies high up into the air and drops the poor creature onto some rocks, hoping the impact will crack that shell open like a nut. Now here's where Aeschylus's bald head enters the story. You see, from high up in the sky, a shiny bald head looks remarkably similar to a smooth rock. So this eagle, probably thinking, perfect, That's exactly the kind of rock I need to crack this tortoise open, swoops down and releases its lunch directly onto Aeschylus's unsuspecting skull. Thud! The great playwright, the man who gave us some of the most profound tragedies in human history, was knocked unconscious by a falling tortoise. He died shortly after, probably wondering if this was some cosmic joke orchestrated by the gods themselves. The irony is absolutely delicious. Aeschylus spent his entire career writing about fate, destiny, and the inescapable will of the gods. His plays were full of characters trying to outwit prophecies, only to fulfill them in the most unexpected ways. And then he goes and does the exact same thing in real life. He tried to cheat death by avoiding buildings, only to be killed by something that fell from the sky anyway. The prophecy came true, but in the most absurdly specific way possible. Not a lightning bolt, not a meteor, not divine punishment, just a very confused eagle with questionable aim and a tortoise that probably had no idea it was about to become the world's first aerial murder weapon. The best part, the tortoise probably survived the impact and just walked away, completely oblivious to the fact that it had just killed one of history's greatest dramatists. Talk about adding insult to injury. Now, if you think getting killed by a tortoise is embarrassing, let me introduce you to Tycho Brahe, the Danish astronomer who literally died because he was too polite to excuse himself from a dinner party to use the bathroom. This is a man who mapped the stars, revolutionized astronomy, and had a pet moose that allegedly died from falling down the stairs after drinking too much beer at a party. Yes, you heard that right. His moose was an alcoholic. But we're not here to talk about his moose's drinking problem. Tycho was famous for two things: his incredible contributions to astronomy and his fake nose. You see, he'd lost part of his real nose in a sword duel over a mathematical disagreement when he was 20, because apparently in the 1500s, people took their math very seriously. So he wore a prosthetic nose made of brass and silver for the rest of his life. But in 1601, at the age of 54, Tycho found himself at a very fancy dinner party in Prague. We're talking about the kind of event where all the important people show up, the wine flows freely, and the social etiquette is more rigid than a mathematical proof. Now here's where Tycho's impeccable manners become a problem. During the feast, he desperately needed to relieve himself. But leaving the table before the host was considered incredibly rude. So what does he do? He holds it, and holds it, and holds it some more. For hours, this man who could calculate the precise movements of celestial bodies couldn't figure out how to politely excuse himself to take a leak. He sat there, probably sweating more than his metal nose, trying to maintain his composure while his bladder was about to explode. By the time the dinner finally ended, Tycho was in agony. He rushed home, but the damage was already done. He had held it in for so long that he'd caused serious injury to his urinary system. Some historians believe he ruptured his bladder. Others think he developed a severe urinary tract infection, but the end result was the same. For the next 11 days, Tycho Brahe, the man who unlocked the secrets of the universe, lay dying because he couldn't bring himself to say, "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." He spent his final days in excruciating pain, probably regretting every moment of that cursed dinner party. And here's the kicker. His last words were reportedly, "Let me not seem to have lived in vain." Well, Tycho, you definitely didn't live in vain, but you certainly died in vain. The man who revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos was killed by his own bladder and an overabundance of Danish politeness. Think about that for a moment. This genius could predict eclipses, track the movement of planets, and build the most advanced astronomical instruments of his time, but he couldn't master the basic human function of excusing himself from a dinner table. It's like being a master chef who dies because he forgot how to chew. The saddest part? If he had just gotten up and said nature calls, he probably would have lived another 20 years and made even more groundbreaking discoveries. Instead, he became the poster child for why sometimes it's okay to be a little rube. But if you think dying from politeness is ironic, wait until you meet Clement Vallandigham, the American lawyer who accidentally killed himself while trying to prove that his client couldn't have killed someone else. This is the ultimate case of taking your job way too seriously. Vallandigham was a prominent Ohio politician and lawyer in the 1800s, known for his dramatic courtroom performances and his unwavering dedication to defending his clients. In 1871, he was representing Thomas McGeehan, who was accused of murdering Tom Myers in a barroom brawl in Hamilton, Ohio. The prosecution's case seemed pretty solid. McGeehan and Myers had gotten into a fight, guns were drawn, and Myers ended up dead with a bullet in his stomach. Case closed, right? Not if Clement Vallandigham had anything to say about it. Vallandigham had this brilliant theory that Myers had actually shot himself accidentally while trying to draw his gun from his pocket. The lawyer was convinced that the victim had grabbed his pistol in such a hurried and clumsy way that he triggered it while it was still in his clothing, basically committing accidental suicide in the middle of a bar fight. Now, any reasonable lawyer might have demonstrated this theory using props, diagrams, or maybe hired an expert witness. But Vallandigham wasn't just any lawyer. He was a showman who believed that dramatic demonstrations were the key to winning over juries. So, the night before his closing arguments, he decided to practice his demonstration in his hotel room. He had 2 pistols with him, one loaded with blanks for the demonstration, and one that was supposed to be unloaded for safety. Can you see where this is going? In the dim lighting of his hotel room, practicing his dramatic reenactment of the crime, Vallandigham grabbed what he thought was the unloaded pistol. He shoved it into his pocket, mimicking how he believed Myers had handled his weapon, and then began to demonstrate the accidental drawing motion that supposedly led to the victim's death. See, he probably said to himself, this is exactly how Myers must have. Bang! Vallandigham had grabbed the wrong gun, the loaded one, and in his enthusiasm to prove that someone could accidentally shoot themselves while drawing a pistol from their pocket, he had just accidentally shot himself while drawing a pistol from his pocket. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The man was trying to prove that accidental self-inflicted gunshot wounds were possible, and he proved it in the most definitive way imaginable, by accidentally inflicting a gunshot wound on himself. He staggered from his hotel room, bleeding from his abdomen, and managed to gasp out what had happened before collapsing. He died the next morning, just hours before he was supposed to present his brilliant theory to the jury. But here's the kicker. His demonstration worked. When word got out about how Vallandigham died, it actually helped his client's case. The jury realized that if an experienced lawyer could accidentally shoot himself while demonstrating how someone might accidentally shoot themselves, then maybe the victim really could have accidentally shot himself too. Thomas McGeehan was acquitted. So technically, Vallandigham won the case. He just didn't live to see his victory. He literally gave his life for his client, although probably not in the way he had originally planned. Talk about dedication to the legal profession. So there you have it, 4 brilliant minds who proved that intelligence doesn't necessarily protect you from spectacularly stupid decisions. Francis Bacon, killed by his own scientific curiosity and poor hygiene. Aeschylus, crushed by the universe's most absurd interpretation of a prophecy. Tycho Brahe, done in by excessive politeness and a full bladder. And Clement Vallandigham, who accidentally shot himself while trying to prove that his client couldn't have killed someone else. This is the ultimate case of taking your job way too seriously.